I'm quite privileged to be sitting around with Diana and Ivy, quite well established, and they have come all the way from Britain. In fact, Diana just reached last night, and Ivy has been touring in India. In fact, she's going to be going to other places also. But that besides, I think one of the things that I've discovered after I've been asked to moderate this session is also that the subjects of the writings are quite contemporary. In fact, as we discuss along, you'll be able to find out, and I would encourage also that you pick up the books later after this. Many of what they have written about actually resonates with all of us because these are universal themes. But before without just talking so much about them, I think we can let them speak for themselves. So, because they're from Britain, let me just start by asking you both about your trip to India. How do you like, and you've been invited to JLF this time. Is this the first time for both of you, and how has your trip been so far and your experience, please?
Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming. I'm incredibly excited to be in India. I've been wanting to come to India for years, but I've never made it until now. So really excited to be at the Jaipur Lit Fest, honoured in fact. And I'm hoping to see a little bit of the city while I'm here.
Yeah. So Ivy, I think Ivy in fact did a tour of Southeast Asia just end of last year, and this time around I think she's already come here and been to some bookstores, as she said, in Delhi. She'll be moving to other places also. So would you like to share a little bit about your experiences so far?
Hi everyone, good afternoon. I've never been to India before, so this has been a most heartwarming and eye-opening experience. I'm on a 5-city tour of India to promote my new book, The American Boyfriend. And I've been overwhelmed by your kindness and your warmth, and the welcome has been most well received. So I'm now on my third destination. I've been to Delhi and visited
We talk about the other works also. But while we talk about these two subjects, perhaps we could first dig a little bit into how they started this writing career. Would you like to tell us how you became a writer, after so many years of writing several books, both of you? Would you like to tell us a little bit about these things, your experiences, and if there are certain things that propels you to bring out these books that you have written about?
Yeah, well, I started writing when I was a teenager, and it started in the form of poetry and journaling. And then I started trying to write short stories, not a form that I have yet been able to master. They're incredibly difficult. I was a journalist for a while as well. I still do journalism, but it was while I was working in journalism that I started working on a novel, which was my first novel, 26A. It took me a long time to write, about 4 years. And while I was working on that, I went to do an MA in creative writing at the University of East Anglia in the UK, and that helped me finish the novel. It gave me a frame to complete it. And since then, I've just been writing one novel after another. I thought I would just write 4. Now that I've reached 4, I feel like there's more in me, maybe another 3. We'll see.
Yeah, that's good to know. Ivy, what about you?
I started quite young because firstly, we all started as readers. So I suddenly had an urge to tell stories, visual storytelling. So I started illustrating and drawing diagrams at about 9. And I've always written in my teens and illustrated my stories. My mother was very instrumental in encouraging me. She always cut out from newspapers like, competitions. Hey, you want to win some money, you could enter this competition. And, and she said, you like writing, you like telling stories, right? So when I started entering these competitions, and I first had the glimmer of hope when I saw my own byline in the newspapers, and I was given more of an encouragement to carry on writing. But it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I decided to take it seriously and do a master's in writing at Middlesex University. And like Diana, that's where I wrote my first novel. I carry on working on it, and also like Diana, it does take years, especially with the first novel. Since then, I carry on working and written 4 other novels. And the last of which was The American Boyfriend.
Yeah, thank you. That's really interesting. I'm sure people will be willing to grab more of your books. Not to give away so much of what the books are about, but while going through these 2 novels that we are discussing about, especially Dinah's Ordinary People, I was quite curious because it largely portrays the black middle class family situations. And also, very interestingly, as the introduction also tells us, that this was set in 2008, the year when Obama became president of the United States, and also the year when Michael Jackson died. So how did those even shape the novel, Ordinary People? And could you also tell us a little bit about where you got that title, Ordinary People?
Well, the title is from a song, the John Legend song, Ordinary People. Because when I got to the end of the novel, I realized that it was quite a musical novel. There's lots of music in it, and it has its own soundtrack. So I wanted the title to be musical as well. So I knew it was going to be a song title, and that seemed like the right title, because it is a book about normalizing the Black British middle class and creating characters that are ordinary. Because I think that in the context of writing black characters in Britain, at the time that I was writing, they're usually painted in a very stereotypical, often negative light, to do with elements of criminality or poverty or racism, slavery, all of which are really important themes. But I felt it was equally important to humanize these characters in the context of a story which is about long-term relationships and about parenting. It's a portrait of London as well. I wanted to capture the nuances of everyday life in London, but to do it from the perspective of Black British middle class people.
What about those 2 events? I mean, the 2008.
The events, well, because I knew the kind of novel I wanted to write, I felt that I needed to place it in quite a succinct time frame. So I chose to do it within a year. And those 2 events, the election of Barack Obama and the death of Michael Jackson, those are very universal moments. And that seemed to speak to the novel's desire to write universal themes in the context of a particular group of people. And I think you can capture societies not just through political events, but also through cultural events. And Michael Jackson is such an iconic figure on the universal stage. So it felt fitting to use those 2 moments.
Right, yeah. It's quite interesting. I mean, there are lots more to do with it. In fact, the novel opened by this couple calling for a party to celebrate the victory of Obama. Anyway, coming to Ivy, when I read the novel, it's quite a thriller. In fact, you yourself mentioned in one of your interviews that this is a psychological thriller, isn't it? And also, when I say that it is quite interesting, is because there are 2 characters who fell in love using social media, LinkedIn, the app, and the distance between Britain and America. When I was just going through some of the reviews of this book, an Indian reviewer quite interestingly put it this way, saying that your novel is a kind of a masala Bollywood movie-like thriller. So how do how do you come up with this idea of writing this thriller that of a novel?
When I was growing up after school in Malaysia, there were always Tamil movies playing after school. I'd always switch them on, even though I couldn't understand it. But obviously there was music and stuff. And I saw relatives, there was crime. And to me, so in Asian storytelling, stories have to be funny, they have to be sad, they have to be a bit scary, there has to be a big chase, there has to be family conflict. And I think those work very well together, which is, they are what people essentially need in stories. I think that fulfills the need. Hence, I suppose, hence the masala description.
Yeah, so maybe you can expect some Bollywood movie adaptations of your text soon. I'm sure that'll be quite interesting for us to read. Now, Diana, I was, again, when I was reading your book, and also a little bit of extracts of your other works also, there is this, I remember coming across The Guardian, mentioning that your fiction takes aim at interactions between love and politics. Certainly, of course, even this book, Ordinary People, has that, foregrounding Obama's victory. But then again, you also have conflicts of relationships, Michael and Melissa and many other texts, who midlife crisis sort of a thing, would you like to explain a little bit more about these interactions between love and politics, as The Guardian is trying to put it? Would you like to agree on it, or?
Yeah, I think, love is political. It's engaged with politics, especially when we're talking about the relationships between men and women, which is what I wanted to write about in Ordinary People, those dynamics in the way men and women communicate with each other. In the context of Michael and Melissa, what is happening in their lives at the time of the novel is that they have had a child, and they have fallen into this very traditional setup of the parenting roles, the male-female parenting roles, that causes a lot of friction between them. Melissa feels that she has been relegated to this kind of inferior, all-consuming mothering role, which she never imagined that she would. But I think the society still holds on to these traditional roles, and people can find themselves falling into them. So that is an example of how political the dynamics are between people. And I often use the political events to try and to give a sense of the events in the novel, the domestic events, giving them a sense of realism, that they're grounded in social experience, in the experiences of a society. So, and I think often with domestic fiction, it's often women are accused of writing domestic fiction as if it doesn't matter or it's not important. So it's important to me to put it on a political stage, to say that we're talking about people's lives, and people's lives within the home are indicative of what happens around us in society.
Yeah, nice. I think I'm sure there are lots of young people who are here who would also like to know a little bit more about, you besides writing. I mean, I think Ivy, I just discovered while we were talking back there in Author's Launch that you are an architect. That's your first, one of the main job that you work on. So, did it play anything? Does that role play into the novel as well? How do you visualize and construct the plot of the novel, or at least the setting of it, being an architect by profession?
I think that's a really important question because I think my profession has helped me really understand structure and also building a creative project from ideas. Everything that we look around us has shaped us, but before that, we have had to shape the world around us. I think that was Winston Churchill who said that. And I think it has really influenced me because my background is in resort design. So all the visual settings that have helped make me the writer that I am today have come from my sense of design and also the urge to create something beautiful each time. Not just create, but to create something that is worth it, that is beautiful. And I think my novels really include, a sense of the visual. They take us as readers into another world in that sense.
Yeah. Now, Diana used to teach creative writing, as I'm told. And as a writer, would you like to also go into a little bit of the aspects of this artist that is in you, being a writer? Maybe some of our young audience would like to be inspired to become a writer like you. Would you like to throw out some tips on what helps you become a writer and also the kind of things that you taught in the university?
Well, it takes a lot of perseverance, obviously, to finish a novel. You have to have an absolute unswerving faith in the story that you want to tell. And you have to be prepared to give almost anything up to get to the end of writing that story. It really can be a matter of life or death sometimes. It really does feel that serious when I'm trying to write a novel. And I found that the things that help me construct the novel as a whole, they're always very difficult. I mean, every novel is its own challenge. But I've found that if I have a sense of destination and a sense of what the central point of interest is, what I'm actually writing about, if I can condense it down into a nutshell, what is this novel about? In the case of Ordinary People, it's about the relationships between men and women. In the case of my first novel, 26 Day, it's about the relationship between twins. It's about condensing that idea so that everything that you come across in the process of writing on the journey, does it apply to that theme? What does it say about that theme? That kind of directs the writing as you go through. So it's central point of interest and destination and an absolute faith in what you're writing. I mean, for me, there has to be a sense that I need this book to exist. Yeah. I want to sit in a shop, and that's what keeps me going. It took me 7 years to write Ordinary People, which is my longest project. Okay. I thought it was never going to end at some points, but if I didn't have that faith, honestly, I wouldn't have been able to get to the end of it.
Yeah, that's great. Ivy, would you like to also throw some lights on, even though, of course, you are in architecture, your art, the larger aspect of that writing in you, how did you come about? How do you frame plots around? And let's say even this one, you took your character across the Atlantic into Florida and build up, now I can see that, these visuals that you've created, in fact, is when you say that you're an architecture largely on all those grounds, I can now look back. When I read through it, I didn't have that picture in mind. So how would you like to throw some lights into the way you shape up your writing, let's say the plot of it? Yeah.
I usually begin a story with a visual. So it usually starts off with an arresting image that I can't let go of. And it could be a dream, it could be a picture. So it's a bit like when you watch TV, when you watch Netflix, there's always one image at the start. That's the image that will get you to watch after the first second. So that second of image is really important to me because obviously I'm a visual person. And from that, I can construct a story like, who is this person? What is this setting? Is it dark? Is it, is there something sinister going on? So I tend to construct my first visual, and then I try to move the story in scenes. So when the scenes stop coming, I develop my characters. So obviously everybody has a different way of working, but I like to storyboard because we do that in design, in architecture. We have to figure out how it is to get from A to Z, in how many moves and why. The why is more important than how. So to me, that helps me to develop the character and the story on, because for me to be working on something else like the day job, the family and everything, without that kind of schedule or focus, it's hard to move a story on, because obviously nobody made you. It could, at any point, it could just stop. So, momentum is important for me, in constructing.
Right, yeah. So now I think one of the things that I'm curious, I mean, at least from both of these works that we're actually talking about, is the autobiographical aspects of it. I mean, I understand that Diana, especially the first novel, seems to have close resonance with your own family and other things. So in terms of real life experiences, how much would you like to say that, Ordinary People is constructed around the sense of inserting yourself as an autobiographical picture in those things? I mean, of course, that's the question I want to throw on both of you. So if you can just give some light on that, Diana?
Yeah, I often use reality as a basis for storytelling. So the real experience, it gets me into the fictional space. It gets me into the room of fiction, where the imagination can then take off. But I find that I do need some element of real experience in order to reach the place of imagination. And when I first began to write it, it was real experience that brought me to the page in the first place. And I found that continues to be the spark for my writing. But from there, it has to travel. It can't just stay in the same place. I think if you take reality and transfer it precisely into fiction, it never works. This is why I tend to use elements of the supernatural in my stories. I like the stories to travel to another dimension of experience, sometimes a spiritual dimension, sometimes a political dimension, but there has to be some kind of travel into another space.
Yeah, Ivy, you want?
Yeah, for me, I tend to have a masala mix of lots of different characters that might be strong to me or weak to me, and I like to work on those characters. If I put myself into it, then that's just coincidence, because I try not to, and I kind of resist putting myself in stories, otherwise, because then they'll be the same. It's all me. So I try to have write from a kind of diverse viewpoint, where I take maybe some of those characters are similar to literary characters, fictional characters that I've loved and have stuck with me for through years, and I wonder why, and I want to explore the depths of those characters which appeal, because obviously they appeal to people who read, and I read. So to me, I develop characters based on both fictional and real people.
Yeah. Now the other aspect is, of course, this is out of curiosity for both. How does one's root, the root of where you are from, let's say for Ivy, how does that Malaysian root play out, shape up any of your stories that you've written about? And of course, even for Diana, I mean, that British Nigerian, picture that you often have a root about. We talk about all these things that often shape up what we are, our identities. Does that play any role in, not just in the way you actually write, and also how do you see that being situated in the way you actually become today? Would you like to say a little bit about that? Maybe Ivy, you can start, yeah?
So I grew up in Johor Bahru, Malaysia, which is actually unbelievably, it's actually a huge city. It's very industrial, it's grim, and it's probably 75% working class. So I just always craved libraries and culture, and I crave escaping and belonging to a world that was not Johor Bahru. Now I am so grateful to be from Johor Bahru because it has made me the writer that I am, because I was very curious. I knew more about the world than a lot of other children that I grew up with, because I was interested, and I think that comes through in my writing, because I try to write about the world that we live in now. When I write about London, I write about multicultural London. I write about diverse lives. If you read my books, there's always Malaysian food in there somewhere. There will be the Asian mum. Okay, there will be somebody who is always frugal, who's always trying to help you, who's trying to save money, who will take the toiletries from the hotels. Somebody who is part of our lives that we recognize and know. So I think to be a writer, you have to be honest. That part of you will always be there, whether you like it or not. And it will come out in your writing because you care about your writing. I think if you didn't care about writing, you would ignore that whole life. But I feel that it's part of me, and it was part of my writing.
Yeah, Diana, any aspect on that?
Yeah, I feel the same way, especially about the food. There is always Nigerian food in my novels. I'm half Nigerian, and I spent 3 years of my childhood living in Nigeria, although the rest of my life I've lived in London. But those 3 years had such a profound impact on me, and I've never forgotten them. And I remember specific details so clearly as if they happened yesterday, and that fed into my writing, especially into my first novel, 26A. But there's always been a desire in me to kind of try and encapsulate that experience of being biracial and belonging to a culture that is by mothers, but it's also mine, and the experience of being a Londoner as well, and those kind of dichotomies within one identity. I've always wanted to document that. I think it does give you kind of an access to other psychologies. When you don't quite belong in one place, you could belong somewhere else. I think there's an opening out of experience that is facilitated by that. In my new novel, A House for Alice, that focuses on an elderly Nigerian woman who has lived in London for 50 years but wants to return to her homeland, and it's about the immigrant experience in the UK and what it means to age as an elderly immigrant in the host country. Those profound decisions that you have to make about where you raise your children, where you die. I think my cultural kind of hybridity is one of the driving factors in what makes me write.
Yeah, I was meaning to actually go into A House for Alice, which is her latest, by the way, which was released last year, and we had to, of course, stock the novel before that for this time. But I think that's a novel I'm actually looking forward to after having read a little bit about that in the papers. I think even in the case of what we've been largely talking about, what else can one expect, besides this angle of elderly Nigerian that you have talked about, and is there anything that is different, in A House for Alice, besides the one that you have actually written prior to that, I mean the ones you've written, 26A, Wonder, and Ordinary People. Could you give us a little bit about that? Not just to give us so much of that, but so that people are curious about your latest novel.
Yeah, A House for Alice is kind of a sequel, but it's also a self-contained novel. You can read Ordinary People and A House for Alice in either order, and they both stand alone as self-contained novels, but it is also a sequel. A House for Alice is set 8 years after the end of Ordinary People, where Michael and Melissa, who are the central couple in Ordinary People, have separated, and in A House for Alice, Michael is married to somebody else, but is still harboring feelings for Melissa, and this is causing friction in his new marriage. But the frame for the story in Alice is, as I said, this story of the elderly Nigerian woman who wants to return home, and the novel poses a question: will she get there? And it's about the impact it has on her family, her 3 daughters. They all have differing opinions about whether she should go or not. And her own sense of yearning, it's kind of used as a frame for other yearnings in the novel, 4 places of belonging. And it goes through 3 generations of Black British people and yearning for places of belonging that are not necessarily to do with geography or homeland. It's also to do with psychological belonging or familial belonging or romantic belonging. It's about the quest for a sense of rootedness, but it doesn't have to be a physical space.
Right. Yeah, so that's quite interesting. So that angle should be something to look forward to. Thank you for letting us know a little bit about that. So Ivy, I mean, you've talked a little bit about your current tour too. What are you cooking up? Anything else after these? And of course, this is still fresh. Not to say that people are tired of this, but are you already in a process of building up something? I know that these tours can be quite exhausting, as you also mentioned about dry throat because you've been speaking everywhere.
Yeah.
But what else? Is there anything else that you would like to let the curious audience be, look forward to?
So so after my India book tour, I will be returning to London and working on my work in progress, which was an abandoned 37,000 word manuscript, which I have had no time to commit to. But I was rereading it that one day when there was no internet, and I thought, hey, this is pretty good. It felt fresh again. So it would be a good time to restart on that, and it's a London psychological thriller about an Asian family in the hospitality industry with family drama and conflicts. And it's set in West London.
Okay, thank you so much. Now I think we can take a couple of questions from the audience. I'm sure the audience will also like to ask some questions. So if the volunteers can pass on. There's one hand raised here in the front, and so the mics can be, So if you can briefly ask your question, not too long. Yeah.
Greetings, ma'am. Myself, Ananya. My question to you is, before putting up my question, I would like to say personally, when I'm also working on some short stories, when I write stories which are especially romance, I tend to imagine myself in the place of either the protagonist or the antagonist. So have you ever imagined yourself in the place of a character while writing a story? And if yes, how has it helped you? That's it. Thank you.
So I think if you can, Diana?
I often imagine myself in the heads of my characters. I find that I have to inhabit the characters in order to write them. I think writing is a little bit like method acting, that you inhabit people and then you write them from the inside outwards. So that's how I tend to approach fiction writing anyway. So whatever character I'm writing is I'm inside the person, and the viewpoint is very open to me. I think when I was doing my MA in writing, I came across this idea about viewpoint. I hadn't really thought about it before, but for me, viewpoint is a very open thing. It doesn't have to be restricted to one character. I like to be in everybody's heads.
Ivy, would you like to also respond to that?
I think in thrillers and suspense, it's quite common to write multiple viewpoints. So you are every character because I think it's mandatory in fiction to inhabit the character. Otherwise, it'll be very dry and it'll seem quite fake because you're not living the emotions through. And you know, I think that to make the writing gripping, you have to put yourself into it. It has to grip. It has to hurt. Otherwise, it won't seem real to the reader. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Hi, Diana. Thank you for sharing your insights behind Ordinary People. I think especially what you said about what I loved about the book is it just brings so much power to very domestic fiction, I guess, as you put it, especially the experience of women. And I loved how we saw through Melissa and Stephanie, like the variety in that and how it can be different. And like where we can find hope when it comes to like our everyday lives.
Yeah.
I hope that there is hope in the novel. I think every novel needs hope, and I think for me, Michael and Melissa, their love story for me has this kind of epic quality and hopefulness about it. They're two people who are almost meant to be together, but are held apart by social forces and the psychological impact of those forces on them. And but the hope, I think, is in their desire for one another that kind of sustains. And at the end of the novel, there is this sense of will they, won't they? You know, we hold them dear through the novel. And I think the novel also tries to manifest in this very immediate way. The physical presence of this world is really important, and I think it was an act of hope for me, was creating these characters and making them so kind of immediate and visceral in that way, and that's kind of expressing a horizon that I hope for, where characters such as these are this kind of living, breathing entities, and not just known through not just seen or understood through the concept of race. So it's kind of a freeing of these characters, and that is a hopeful act, I think.
Yeah, thanks. I thought I saw a hand somewhere this side. Yeah. Would you like to please pass on? Is there anything else? Okay. There's a couple of hands here. Yeah. The mics will be coming, so.
Hi. I've always had a knack for writing, but it's only now that I actually got the time to deep dive into it. So I was thinking, whenever I find myself deeply immersed into the craft, I always see myself walking the tightrope between actually being myself and putting my heart out there and thinking of something that could be commercially scalable and liked by people. So do you also find that conflict in yourself while you're writing?
Is it okay if we take those, the two ladies there? Yeah. Maybe for the sake of time, we'll just take the questions together.
Hello, my question is for Ivy. You said that when you're writing or creating characters, you said that the characters are created partly from reality and partly from imagination. Is there any particular process you use to create these characters? Like, do you maybe observe people around you, go on an observation spree, or like are these people that you really, really know really, really well? So, and also, which of these processes work best for you?
Yeah, so I guess, yeah, Ivy and then Diana. Is that, both of you can share.
So your question was about the real characters and the fictional characters and whether they are really, really real. Is that right? Sorry, I didn't catch the beginning of it. Yeah. Yes. Oh, the process. Okay, so because I'm more from a visual basis, and I've always done it since I was 9, I would draw them because I was so interested, like in their hair or what jeans do they wear and all that, and why are they wearing those jeans? You know, why not these jeans? And did they have their hair very, very short? Why? You know, so to me, like it's like creating comic art or character art. So those make more sense to me. Like when I see my own character art and diagrams. And of course you can change them. I put glasses on them and then wow, they look smart. But and I can give them facial expressions. And they're just very simple. They're just diagrams, they're almost like emojis. But you know how emojis get your attention when we even put them in such a small message. And that's all you need. Because in a small message and the right emoji, you will get the sense of a character, and you can build from there, and that's where the fun starts, because then you can let your imagination build on those bare bones. I hope that helps.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so Diana, maybe you can respond to that.
So I think the question was about the relationship between writing what you want to write and writing what you think the market wants you to write. I think you should always write what you want to write, first of all. And I think if you're driven solely by the market, there's a danger of the work being soulless or disconnected from you as a creative writer. So I think, for me, it has to come from within. The idea has to come from within, something point has to be from within, and not worrying so much about what you think the market will like or not like, because there's always, I think if you are fascinated by something, there's a chance that other people will also be fascinated by it.
Thank you.